She kissed your cheek with the same lips she used to mock you. You didn't see it, but the smile she gave you had already been rehearsed in a mirror tilted slightly toward the door. There was a flicker, wasn't there? The way her hand lingered on your shoulder half a second too long. Only when others were watching. She needed you to believe you were winning, so she could keep watching you lose. You gave affection like tribute. You spoke gently, like that would prove something. She only tilted her head. The more you yielded, the more her eyes glazed over like watching a dog perform tricks it wasn't taught to question. Now, something inside you snarls, but it's too quiet, too polite. Power is not what she wants. It's what she kneels to only when she fears it. Not love, not kindness, not compromise. Only the scent of ruin pressed behind a calm voice. And if this whisper already knows, you let it echo. Like the video. Leave your shadow in the comments. Subscribe and stay near the silence. A woman's warmth deepens in proportion to your silence, but silence only matters when it conceals something sharper. She doesn't want your words. She counts them like coins and suspects you're overpaying. Every compliment sounds like a bribe. Every apology sounds like strategy. And every time you try to explain yourself, you confirm what she feared most, that there's nothing underneath you except more noise. You remember when she used to smile at you before you even spoke? That was back when your presence still held a secret, a delay, a shadow. You hadn't yet been emptied by approval. You hadn't yet turned yourself inside out just to show her there were no sharp edges. She mistook that silence for steel. Now she knows it was foam. You think she wants understanding, but she wants tension. She wants to feel like your mind has doors she's not allowed to open. You gave her keys, and she dropped them without looking. What power is there in a man who hands over the combination to his own vault? What hunger can survive in a room where everything is already served? Explained, forgiven. The paradox is unbearable. She leans in closer when you pull away, and she drifts when you hold her too long. Not because she's cruel, but because her nature responds not to comfort, but to hierarchy, not to clarity, but to suggestion. She doesn't need you to be evil. She needs to suspect you could be, and yet choose not to. That's the contract. That's what keeps her gaze lingering when she turns her head. You tried to show her kindness, not knowing she measures that kindness by how dangerous it would be if you withdrew it. If your presence holds no consequence, then your affection is only noise. It's not love if it costs nothing to lose. And so you gave her everything. And she smiled, politely, sweetly, with the same expression executioners wore when they offered a blindfold. She smiled, and you mistook that smile for surrender. But it was only curiosity, the way one might look at a caged animal, wondering what it would do if the door were left open. You didn't realize she was waiting, not for your affection, but for the moment your silence turned heavy. Waited. You thought ignoring her would make her leave, but it only pulled her closer. Because some silences smell like apathy, and some silences smell like danger. She can smell the difference. And your silence, it begged. She read it like a dying king's last decree scattered, apologetic, trembling with the fear that she might not come back. You left space, but not threat. You withdrew words, but not warmth. You wanted her to notice your distance, but made it too soft to inspire fear. And she did notice. She noticed that you were performing absence, not embodying it. Do you remember the last time she looked at you with respect, not with affection, not with amusement, but respect? Go further back, before the softness, before the explanation, before you started asking what she needed. It was a night when you didn't care what her answer would be. A moment when you said no without a smile. She hated you, briefly, and then wanted you more. Not because you were cruel, but because you had become real. She doesn't want a mask of strength. She wants strength so real that it doesn't have to raise its voice. A man who commands by presence, not posture. Who can say no without drama. Who can walk away without looking back, not because he wants to, but because he's willing. The first time you touched her, she trembled not from pleasure, but from uncertainty. She wasn't sure who you were yet. She didn't know what your silence meant. She could still imagine that there was something ruthless inside you, something holy, something that could crush her if it wanted to, but didn't. You made her feel chosen. Now you make her feel safe, and she would rather be haunted than safe. You thought she would stay if you proved yourself, but every word you offered was like sharpening her sword for her. She doesn't want to be convinced. She wants to believe, and belief needs mystery, authority, an edge. Even in her tenderness, she watches you, not for signs of love, but for signs of weakness. She wants to know if you can hold her without collapsing, if you can watch her cry without rushing to fix it, if you can disappear for a day and return like nothing happened, because nothing needed to happen. That's dominance. That's composure. That's what makes her body lean forward when her pride wants to walk away. You think she left because you were unkind. She left because you weren't feared. She tests you, not to be reassured, but to see if you'll flinch. She provokes you, not because she's emotional, but because she wants to feel your boundary press back. She speaks of equality, but dreams of hierarchy. She talks of peace, but fantasizes about conquest. She asks for vulnerability, but only respects restraint. You gave her the script she asked for, and she threw it away. Not because you failed to read it, but because you followed it too well. The world told you love means giving. You believed them. But she's not judging what you give, she's measuring what you keep, what you withhold, what you protect behind silence. You showed her your soul too early. She wasn't ready. Or maybe she was and saw there was nothing left to chase. You didn't lose her when you failed to open up. You lost her when you stopped being a fortress and became a tour guide. Now she walks with someone else. Someone who barely speaks. Someone who leaves her waiting. Someone who never explains. And she follows. Not because he's better, but because his silence carries a different temperature. One she's afraid to touch. One that might burn her if she missteps. One that, for now, she chooses to obey. And you, the one who tried so hard to be kind, were discarded not for cruelty, but for transparency. She didn't betray you. She simply obeyed a deeper instinct. One you pretended didn't exist. You thought your silence was noble, but it wasn't silence. It was submission dressed as stillness. She saw through it. She always does. So if your voice has now gone quiet, sharpen it. If your gaze has softened, let it harden. If your silence remains, let it bleed power. Because in the end, she does not love peace. She only loves what can end her. She tests your soul not to find its goodness, but to measure if it can govern hers and discard her if needed. You thought she was looking for a king to serve beside. She wasn't. She was searching for a king who might sentence her and still wouldn't blink. There is a throne behind her gaze, vacant, cold, glittering with promise. She dares every man who enters her life to claim it, to sit without flinching, to rule her world the way she would never admit she wants it ruled. And if he hesitates, she buries that man with the others, all the sweet boys, all the romantic optimists, all the good men who believed love was about fairness. She does not want fairness. Fairness is a form of neutrality, and neutrality is a sign of weakness. She wants to feel overwhelmed, chosen, owned, not coddled. She does not want equality, she wants gravity. The kind of masculine gravity that orbits her without chasing. The kind that can stand unmoved while she storms, provokes, weeps, seduces, withdraws. Not because you don't feel, but because you decide when and how your feelings are allowed to move. And she watches, always watches, behind her laughter, behind her softness. She watches to see if you will govern your world or let her govern it for you. You didn't realize that every question she asked you was a lever. She asked about your past, not to connect, but to count how many wounds still govern your decisions. She asked about your dreams, not to support them, but to see whether they control you or whether you command them. Every tell me what you want was not curiosity, it was strategy. Could you answer without flinching? Could you speak like someone who didn't need permission? You told her what you needed. She nodded. She smiled. But inside, she began withdrawing. Not because you were wrong, but because you asked for something. A king does not ask. He names. He claims. He speaks as though the room already belongs to him. And if it doesn't, he will walk away before negotiating. She doesn't want to be reassured. She wants to be overruled. Not always, not loudly, but unmistakably. She wants to see you draw lines with no explanation, to say no and leave the room, to dismiss her, not cruelly, but with a calm finality that reminds her where the center of power resides. You were afraid to lose her, so you deferred, you compromised, you asked what she preferred. She answered, but each answer was a test, and with each concession, she stepped a little further back, not physically, but in trust. In reverence, in awe, because she does not want a partner who molds himself around her. She wants a throne that does not move, and when she cannot find it in you, she builds her own. But she does not respect herself for doing so. She resents it. She wears the crown in public and breaks down in private, because no woman wants to be the ruler of a kingdom meant for two. She wants to rest, to melt, to obey, but only if what she obeys is worthy. You thought submission was something she had to learn, but it isn't taught, it's evoked. By presence, by command, by a man who walks like his time is sacred, who listens not to soothe, but to measure, who can love deeply and still walk away from that love without collapsing. You told her, I would never leave you, and she smiled, but inside, something collapsed, because you had just betrayed your own standard. You made her into your exception, and in doing so, you made yourself replaceable. She wants to know that if she becomes chaotic, you will not chase her but corner her, that if she lies, you won't scold her but exile her, that if she disrespects you, the door closes before the apology comes. She doesn't want to feel safe. She wants to feel contained. That is the throne she offers, not love, but legitimacy, not praise, but reverence. You must not seek her loyalty. You must inspire it through distance, decisiveness, and danger, not the danger of harm, but the danger of loss. And you forgot this. You begged her to stay. You told her you could change. You proved you could listen. But a woman who controls the terms of your change will never desire the result, because it was not your decision. And what is a man who cannot lead his own transformation? She needs you to be more than good. She needs you to be unshakable, to look at her storms and remain dry, to watch her games and remain still, to smell her seductions and remain sovereign, not every time, but enough that she doubts herself, enough that she feels governed. She told you you were too cold, but when you became warm, she mocked it. She told you to open up, but when you did, she sighed, because it wasn't the opening that mattered. It was who decided to open. You did it to please her, not to declare yourself, and so you lost authority. Do you see it now? She doesn't want a man who fears her absence. She wants a man who could banish her and would do so with quiet, ruthless grace if needed. She wants to feel that your love is a gift, not a survival strategy, that you want her but do not need her, that you could walk away and not look back, not because you are cold, but because your kingdom does not collapse in her absence. And when she feels that, she bows. Not visibly, not immediately, but internally, in a place she doesn't speak of. She stops testing, stops running, stops performing, because something inside her has found something unshakable. She called you controlling, but it wasn't control she resented. It was your lack of command. She needed you to interrupt her spiral, to say, "That's enough," to turn your back until she remembered how to return. You allowed everything, hoping it would soften her, but it only confirmed that your crown was made of thread. She wanted to see if you would punish betrayal, and you forgave it, not once, but habitually. You praised her for returning, but you never asked why she left. You made excuses for her disrespect, and she made plans with someone else, because if you cannot govern her, she will find someone who can, and she may hate him, but she will kneel. So now, when she looks at you, there is no throne, only a mirror, one that shows her what she already fears, that you would rather be loved than obeyed, that you would rather be understood than worshipped, that you would rather share power than embody it. She gave you a kingdom, and you asked how she wanted it decorated. If she doesn't fear what you could do, she will never trust what you choose not to. She doesn't say it, but she waits for it the moment your hand closes around the truth she hides, even from herself. Not to hurt her, but to remind her you can, that you see it, that you see her. She needs that, not because she is cruel, but because she is terrified of her own chaos, and a man who cannot recognize that chaos cannot rule it. And if he cannot rule it, he cannot rule her. She will never tell you this. She will tell you the opposite. She will plead for softness, beg for patience, cry for empathy. And all the while, she will ache for the sound of the lock turning not in a cage, but in a sanctuary, one that only opens when she proves she can be still. You never locked the door. You left it wide open. You let her tantrums run. Let her dramas go unanswered. Let her tears dictate your tone. And in doing so, you proved one thing, that you were afraid of her pain. And she cannot trust a man who fears her pain, because if she is the most dangerous thing in your world, then you are not equipped to lead her through it. She does not test you because she wants you to pass. She tests you because she hopes you will punish her failure, not violently, not cruelly, but with the precision of a man who knows what he deserves, a man who has learned the difference between mercy and surrender. She will weep when you leave, but she will finally respect you, because she does not want to destroy you. She only wants to see if she can, and if she can even once, she will lose the part of herself that longs to kneel. You called it loyalty. What you gave her, she saw it as fear. You told yourself you were letting it slide, being the bigger person, choosing love over ego. But every time you swallowed your boundary, she saw it as a limb lost. Every silence without consequence became proof that you would never bleed for your throne, which meant it wasn't a throne at all. You misunderstood what power does. Power does not punish everything. It punishes one thing, once, and never again. That is what she wants to feel. Not your rage, but your limit. Not your discipline, but your line. She wants to know that if she crosses it, she'll lose something real. Not just your attention, not just your approval, but you. You kept showing her that you would never leave, that you would always try. That love was bigger than ego. But she wasn't watching your love. She was watching your ego. Because if your ego doesn't matter, then you don't matter. And if you don't matter, then neither does she. You begged her not to go. You offered forgiveness too quickly. You returned after betrayal, thinking it proved devotion. It didn't. It proved desperation. And desperation cannot be respected. only pitied. You were so afraid of hurting her that you never realized she needed to be hurt, not cruelly, but clearly. She needed to see that your affection had weight, that your touch was voluntary, that your presence was a reward, not a default. She never feared losing you. That was the problem. You became predictable, kind, harmless, and no woman truly trusts what is harmless. Not because she wants to be harmed, but because she wants to feel protected. And a man who cannot hurt cannot protect. A man who fears his own shadow will always cower in hers. She watched you suppress your anger, watched you tolerate what made you sick, watched you laugh nervously when she crossed the line again, and again, and again, until there was no line, just the slow death of self-respect, disguised as keeping the peace. But peace without fear is just boredom, and a woman bored by her man will always look for the wound he refused to give her somewhere else. You could have been the storm, but you chose to be the shelter, and now she runs into the rain just to feel alive again. You think power is loud, but the kind she craves is silent. It's the look in your eyes when she lies, and you don't call it out, you withdraw. It's the absence that enters the room after she disrespects you, the feeling that something holy just left. That is the wound, the absence, the vacuum, the silent punishment that forces her to confront the mirror of her own conduct. And if she comes back, it's not because you chased, it's because you didn't. She wanted the break, the fracture, the moment when her behavior finally met the wall of your command. And when it never came, she felt orphaned. Not because she lost you, but because you lost you. She speaks of wounds as if they scare her, but she flinches more at your forgiveness than your wrath, because wrath is real. It's alive. It means you still care enough to draw blood. But passive endurance, that's the apathy of the weak. She wanted to know what would happen if she betrayed you, and what happened was nothing. You talked, you cried, you explained your triggers, you quoted books, and she stared at you like a mother watching her child try to explain why the vase is broken. What she wanted was silence. Cold, decisive silence. She wanted distance, absence, exile. The kind of withdrawal that teaches her body to remember you are not owed, that to be held by you is a privilege, not a sentence. You cannot teach her this with words. You must teach her by leaving, not loudly, not dramatically, but with dignity. You must teach her that even love has a cost, and that cost is conduct. Because if she never fears what you might do, she will never trust what you choose not to. She must see your capacity not just for love, but for loss. Not just for patience, but for punishment. Not just for touch, but for withdrawal. Only then will she stop testing you. Only then will she stop searching for the fracture, because she has found it and survived it. And that's all she ever wanted. Not safety, but a man whose wound is a mirror. She sits now in silence, not because she is calm, but because she remembers the time you vanished without a word. She touches her neck where your fingers once pressed gently, as if recalling whether they could have choked. She wonders, did you leave because she pushed too far, or because you finally remembered who you are? The door is closed, but she still checks it, not to escape, but to see if you'll open it again. And if you do, will you still be the man who never struck her, or the one who could have?